this is Sally Flashberger from the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities. And we're here today for another Living Well Wednesday. We are going to be talking about healthy relationships. We're really just going to have a great conversation about relationships and what is important to people with disabilities around relationships. We have some great people joining us today. We have Pam Malin from Disability Rights Wisconsin, and she is currently working on a healthy relationships curriculum. So she'll give us a little bit of information about that at the end. We have Stephanie and Ashley, who actually all three of those people are board members for the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities. And they're here today. Ashley and Stephanie are self-advocates. And so they're here today to help guide us through this conversation and really talk about their experiences and the experiences with their friends. So I'm gonna, I think Pam is gonna help facilitate. And so we're gonna get started, and I'm gonna turn it over to Pam if that's okay.
Well, thanks. So I was excited to be invited to this conversation because I think we are not having it enough, especially in this community. And I think we want to talk about it. So we invited Ashley and Stephanie, and we're just going to have a great conversation around relationships and what it looks like when you have a disability, maybe some barriers and some great outcomes, and talk from there. So Stephanie, can you introduce yourself and kind of what your role in a relationship looks like right now, and how things are going for you?
Sure. I am a self-advocate, and as Sally was saying, I am on the BPDD board. I have been married for about 2.5 years, but my husband and I have known each other for a grand total of about 12 or 13 years. What else did you ask me, Pam, to talk about here?
Well, I think that's enough to start with. We'll get into more as we go, whatever works. So Ashley, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your current dating status and whatever else you want us to know?
Hi, I'm Ashley Matthew. I'm a self-advocate, and my current dating status is single right now.
And that's okay, right? So, so I think we wanted to talk a little bit about like your early relationships when you were just becoming an adult and thinking about what you wanted as you grew up and looked at other people in relationships around you. Like, what did that look like for you in your own head, but also in your family? Like, what did it look like for the people around you, and what kind of messages were you hearing? So either one, Ashley or Stephanie, if you want to start.
Okay. Ashley, do you want to go or should I?
I don't care. Whatever you want to do.
Okay. Well, early on, I should mention I am one of 4 kids, so I have 3 siblings, and I'm the only sibling with a disability. So early on for me, what it really looked like was, I think in my early teen years, around between 14 and 16, my siblings started getting asked out and going on dates and things. And initially I thought, well, that's going to happen for me too. Eventually I'll meet somebody and they'll want to go on a date, and it'll go from there. And my friends would get asked out and get asked to dances and things like that, and it really wasn't happening for me quite at that same point. And I remember asking my mom, I was maybe 14, and asking my mom, hey Mom, I'm noticing a lot of my friends are getting asked to dances and stuff, and I'm not. I don't understand, you know. And she sat me down and she said, well, honey, I think it's just going to take a little bit longer for people to kind of get to know you and see you for who you are. I think a lot of people, when they first meet you, kind of see your disability before they actually see who you are. And that was tough to hear. I got really, really sad because I don't think there's enough positive messaging around disability in dating or disability in relationships. And I've always been kind of in the position of the pioneer, one of the people that kind of does things first, and you're kind of hoping there's a model or a framework for it. And sometimes there really isn't, and you have to be willing to be in that role and be one of the people that does it first, or that shows others how you can do it. And so that's sort of where my journey started.
Thanks, Stephanie. I think that the message your mom gave you was a great message. And I challenge other parents out there that are watching or listening that it's not about never, it's about that it just may take a little longer, or there might be different ways that you meet people that isn't typical, but that doesn't mean you can't. And I think sometimes not talking about it at all, or getting the message of, well, I don't think anybody will ever, you know, and then putting that out there, that makes it hopeless. And we want to make sure that everybody has opportunity, right? I mean, that's really what VPDD is all about, is opportunity and access to great lives, right? So with your mom saying that to you, I think she gave you hope, at least that it could happen. And, that's the best we can do. So that's good. Great.
Yeah, she really did.
Yeah. Ashley, do you want to share kind of what you grew up with and what messages you heard?
Well, I have quite a different kind of story. My sister, always kind of, when you're growing up and your cousins and everybody's kind of in a relationship, and, you have guys kind of looking at you weird because you have a disability or whatever. Now, my mom always kind of helicoptered me, which kind of hovered around me. So I kind of, when I wanted a relationship, I kind of had to talk through it with her and kind of give her say into it. So, I mean, I think it's kind of like saying, okay, I want a relationship, and what kind of boundaries do I want, So if you don't want your significant other they can talk to certain people, but they can't flirt with everyone, and you kind of have to set those boundaries right away, because if you don't, then what's going to happen is it's going to keep happening in a relationship. So I think that that's very crucial, and just kind of like thinking to yourself, okay, how am I going to convince my mom that this is a person to date? And if that person ends up having some things that my parents don't like, and if it ends up, failing because they have some kind of behavior or something, then that's my dignity of risk to take. So just kind of knowing yourself and what kind of boundaries you want to. Do you want your significant other to compliment you? Do you want your significant other is it okay once in a while if he or she gets mad if they are swearing at you? Is that okay? And just knowing yourself and your boundaries and what you would want. And then also kind of trying to see if your mom or dad will kind of allow you to date them. That's the hard thing.
Yeah. So Ashley, I heard a couple things in that. And one is that parents of teens or adolescents with disabilities often slow down a little bit and talk about, or should talk about, what kind of things you're okay with, what kind of things you're not okay with. We call them deal breakers, or things that, you know, you don't want in a relationship. And I wonder, as I'm thinking about this, I think all parents, regardless if your kid has a disability or not, should really slow down and have those conversations. But we aren't always comfortable to do that, right? But I think it's important. And then the other thing I heard you say, Ashley, was that, will my parents allow? And I feel like that's a word that's said a lot in people's lives with disabilities. And how do you navigate that allow word when you're an adult, and when guardianship, if you have it, doesn't mean you can allow who people can talk to and not talk to. And if you don't have it, you can't even step in and do that. But as a caring parent, I'm a mom, you know, I want to talk to my kids about what's good and what's bad, what's safe and what's not. So that allow word kind of feels a little like I have to get permission first.
Mhm.
Stephanie, what do you think about that?
It does. I mean, I understand the tendency for that to be in there, because it depends on a person's situation and the guardianship and the level at which your parents are involved in your life. But I always say, you're an adult, and so the best I can say is try to navigate that parental relationship and that relationship with each other from that perspective, from the perspective of this person my child is an adult, and they want to meet someone, they want to have connections with people. And I like what you said, Pam, about having conversations about what's safe and what's not. I mean, that's what you should be doing, whether your child has a disability or not. A lot of that framework is built in for siblings that don't have disabilities earlier on than it is for people with disabilities, simply because I think it isn't talked about a lot, and often is presented like it's not necessarily possible, or it's not necessarily going to happen for you. And I don't think that's the right viewpoint to take, because you don't know where life is going to take you. So
Yeah, I think, I mean, Ashley, you said a term that I don't know if everybody hears it, but, or knows what it means, but dignity of risk. And I think that means, you know, like when I was growing up, there were things that I did that I fell on my face, or I, you know, like kind of learned the hard way, or I got a broken heart. And it really did help me then create some of those boundaries that, oh, next time I'm not going to allow this behavior in a relationship, or next time I'm going to look for this instead. So what does dignity of risk mean for you, Ashley?
So dignity of risk means that, you know, even if someone tells you, oh, that's that player or that's that person that you shouldn't date, if you want to date him or her, you should be allowed to fall out flat on your face. And even if it might take people with disabilities maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times, maybe they want to be with that person, but unless it's like not really like safe, they should be allowed to make those decisions and to fall flat on their face. I mean, I feel like when like with my sisters and different things, people allowed them, oh, they were with that player or whatever for 4 or 5 years, but they allowed that to happen. But I feel like with people with disabilities, they kind of hover in helicopter and don't allow them to make those mistakes. And it, you know, if that person loves that person, or if that person cares about that person, they might make a mistake and fall flat on their face. That's just the way it is. And just kind of allowing that to happen, just kind of allowing that sister to be with that person that that the parents don't like.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hear what
agree.
you're saying. I wonder though. Oh, sorry, Sally. I thought you were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say, it's such a interesting conversation because, all of these experiences start so young. And so I think what often I used to work with young people in school and, like K through 12. And so I think what's always missing is making sure that people are having those conversations. Even in school, sometimes kids with disabilities miss out on these same learning experiences and conversations, so they know, what things are important in a relationship. And so just thinking as a parent and, like thinking like don't just because your son or daughter has a disability, you need to make sure that they're learning along the way what are good examples and all of that, so that when they do take that risk, they have some background knowledge to know, oh, maybe that wasn't the best idea, right?
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
I was going to say, Ashley, as you were talking, like, I'm going to play the mom role here for a second, and I'm going to go, but I don't want someone to hurt you. And what if I think that they're a bad person? And you're talking about dignity of risk. I want to protect you. But there's a piece that you talked about that was sometimes you can only protect so much, and then you kind of have to let us learn through experience, right? So unless somebody's a known, like, person that hurts people, it's more about talking about how to navigate it if you're in a situation that feels unsafe, and how to get out, or how to get help or talk to somebody.
Yes, I think that those safety things that we talk about in Safe and Free that I'm teaching right now actually teach it, if the person does, do different behaviors, maybe you'd have a toolkit to, this is what you do in this situation, or this is what you do. Because honestly, our parents are going to be gone, and what are we going to do? We have to learn these safety skills. We should be allowed to date who we want to, and if we are in an unsafe situation, we should be able to have the tools to navigate when we're in an unsafe situation too. So
yeah, I was thinking, so Stephanie, a typical teen, and I mean with and without disabilities, if you say you can't do something, if I as a mom say, Stephanie, you can't date a boy, what are you gonna do?
Usually at that age, the word you can't or don't just encourages the behavior that you don't want to encourage.
And it makes you hide, right? So
Right.
that's all. I think that's more unsafe than talking to somebody about having a relationship, right?
You learn
So
to
moms don't
sneak
know that
around.
always.
Right. And rather than having your kids sneak around and do things behind your back without your knowledge, I think it's really valuable to include everybody in those conversations about relationships and what's healthy and what's not, and let them know it's not about permission necessarily. It's about experience and being willing to face the consequences of those experiences. So
yes, so I want to move on a little bit, because the thing that I hear the most when I talk to self-advocates who want to be in a relationship and who are navigating the whole thing with mom and dad or guardians or whatever that piece is, the number one thing I hear is, how do I meet somebody? How do I meet a safe person? How do I meet a person who loves me just because I'm me, and not looking at me with my disability, or not judging me of what I can or can't do, but just sees all of me and accepts me as I am? So Stephanie, I'm gonna kind of talk to you first, and then I'll talk to Ashley. So how did you navigate that as you were growing up? And then how did you kind of, as an adult now, navigate it to where you are now?
Well, generally, I'm a little bit of a, I guess, a old-fashioned type of person because I know there's different like online services and things you can use, dating services you can use, but I never really went that route. What I did mostly was in circles of friends or at school or the different environments you're in, um, and meeting people and just connecting, which is, I guess, now more the old-fashioned way to do it. But I really
Did it always work, Stephanie, though?
no.
Okay.
There were there was a lot of awkward moments, or there could be rejection, or it could get to a certain point and then not work. And that's normal. That's a natural way that relationships go. They don't all lead to something long term or even marriage. It's just kind of feeling things out, trying things out, and getting an idea of what's important to you and what you want to look for in someone that you want to be with.
Yeah, sometimes I say it's like picking out a pair of shoes. The prettiest pair might be the one you're attracted to, but they might still pinch your toes. So instead, find the one that's most comfortable, that fits you the best, and that you want to wear for a long time. And that's kind of like a relationship, right? If there's any sort of ache or pinch or thing that feels uncomfortable, then they're not necessarily a good fit. So
Right.
finding the right fit.
Right.
Okay, so Ashley, what about you? How do you meet people? How do you navigate finding someone that you're interested in and then making a connection, especially during the pandemic, right? Because we're all stuck in our houses.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't go online to just scope around on Facebook and try to find someone in Arizona or someone, just people I known for a while. And, I don't really tell people I like them unless it's been like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, and just kind of building that relationship with them in the beginning.
Is it important to have a friendship first, Ashley?
Yes, it is very important to have a friendship first. And just because someone says hi to you doesn't mean they like you. Just kind of making that straightforwardness. So like for me, I'm very straightforward when I like someone. I don't try to make it seem like if I like them, I'll tell them. If I don't, just being that straightforwardness is really kind of crucial, because that people can't read your mind. So
yeah, we sometimes pretend that they can, right? Well, you
yes.
should just know how I feel.
Yeah, but I'm a very straightforward person. So if I like you, I'll tell you. That's kind of the thing that I do and stuff like that. And then I try to get to know them for a long time before I, like 2 or 3 years before I pursue anything, just because if, my mom doesn't like them, and maybe they can improve on some of their skills so that eventually my mom will like them.
So Ashley, if your mom doesn't like them, that doesn't mean you don't become friends with them. It means that maybe you just listen to the people around you and are a little more cautious.
Yes, and then just kind of ease it away kind of thing, and then come back to it.
Okay.
Maybe eventually when they gain proper skills or learn better skills.
Or you meet somebody else, right?
Or I meet someone else, exactly.
Yeah. All right, so Stephanie, tell us, how did you get, I think most of us know you're married, but
Yes.
maybe not out there in Facebook land, but how did you get to that point? Like, was it did you meet them and then you were like, the stars were in your eyes, like in cartoons, and then you ran passionately towards each other and embraced, and immediately he said, would you be my wife? And that's how it happened? Or was there a different story?
I do like the fairy tale version of it, Pam. But but that is not how it happened. Really, we started out as friends. He worked at a Starbucks near where I lived, and I would go to that Starbucks and write a lot. And over time, we started having conversations and we hit it off as friends. At the time, he was dating somebody else and I was doing my own thing, but we would hang out and do stuff. And
As friends, right?
friends, yeah.
Okay.
So, and then I think that was for about year and a half, 2 years, something like that. Then I moved to Washington State and he was here. And it was one of those things where if you've ever had a friend that you don't necessarily talk to all that often, but when you do talk, it's like no time has passed.
Those are the best kind of friends, right?
Those are awesome friends. And that was really he and we really connected in that way where it was like, oh, it's not like I love you and I got to tell you. It was just something fun would happen or weird would happen. And I would think, oh, I got to tell Ben about this, you know? And when I came home for a visit, we wound up reconnecting and went for ice cream at a park just to catch up with each other and say, well, how's life been, you know? And had a really good time. And then we said, you know, we should probably talk more often. But I went back to Washington State and life got busy and I forgot to kind of check in with him. And then I'm like, you know what? I owe Ben some like fun emails or fun messages. So I went on Facebook and messaged him. He happened to be on and we chatted for like 3 hours.
So one of those conversations where you don't put the phone down and you end up falling asleep on the other end, but you're still talking. Okay.
Right. And so that's how it started. And then we started chatting every day at a certain time because of the time difference between Wisconsin and Washington State. And like, I want to say about a month after we started chatting, it suddenly hit me like, oh, I think I might like him. Oh no.
So it's like getting out of the friend zone, right? That you're like, oh, I might like them more.
Yeah, I was like, oh no. Okay.
So how do you do that, Stephanie? How do you do that? Everybody wants to know. How do you go from friends to like opening up your heart and being so vulnerable that they might reject you?
Right. All I can tell you is if you're feeling that connection with somebody and you think they might feel that connection with you, you got to take the risk. You got to take the risk. And I will admit, I was not a big risk taker in relationships. It really does feel kind of scary, and you don't want to be, you know, nobody wants to be rejected.
Right. Can I ask you though, I know you felt kind of scary and I get that, but because you knew him as well as you did and you'd been friends, there was a safety to that fear still, right?
Yeah.
You knew that he cared enough about your feelings that either way it might be okay.
Yeah, like the thing that got me to really ask the question was I knew him well enough and I thought, well, if I ask it and it's not there, he will treat me kindly. He will be nice. I know he'll be nice. Either way,
Very good.
you know, he'll I mean, it might be awkward for a little bit, but I think we could still be friends. So even if it's a no, it'll be okay. He's not going to hurt my feelings. He's not going to make me feel bad. And it wasn't a no, but it was a yes. So,
Yay!
yeah. So that's kind of where things started. And then we had previously talked about him coming out for a visit when we were still friends. And so we did that and kind of thought, you know, figured he'll be there for 10 days. We can figure out if there's really a connection or not. And there was. And pretty soon after that, I decided, well, I'm going to move back to Wisconsin. I've got family here. I've got friends here. I've got, you know, I've got the makings of a life here. And now I've got him. And so I came back and we started dating face to face. And one of the things I will say about our relationship that I really like, which might strike some people as odd, is we spent the first 5 months of it long distance.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, we talk about not meeting online, and I think that this is going to send kind of a different message. And I don't want to say that meeting online is the right place to meet. You guys met in person and then went online. And that's
Right.
very different, right? Because you
Right.
knew who he was, you knew he was real, because there's lots of scammers out there, right?
Right.
And you knew that he was a nice, kind person
Mhm.
before you did that 5 month apart. So then it was a friend you were connecting with, not a friend that you'd never met in person.
Right. And it's important. I think it's important to know who you're chatting with online. If you know them first, that's it makes it a lot safer to do.
Yeah, I usually say if you don't know them in person, then you really don't know who's on the other end.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So
So
Ashley, so you have navigated dating and you've had some relationships. I'm saying it with a question mark because I think so, right?
Yes, I don't think that they would like be like study relationships, but I definitely think that they were relationships. And you know, a lot of them, you know, some of them, a lot of them just ended up in failure. And then I learned, okay, I don't want to date that person because they're flirting off with someone else, or that they're, you know, just not maybe committed to me. And, you know, or maybe my life as an advocate is too busy for them, that maybe they would rather not be in a committed relationship with an advocate because I'm so busy all the time. Maybe I can't call them like 3 times a day, or
Yeah,
or
well, thank you for saying that, Ashley, because I think sometimes, and I'm going to say this in a way, hopefully that people understand, but sometimes one person in the relationship feels like they are wanting it and the other person is not wanting it or not doing the right things. But you get to listen to your own feelings too, right? You get to say, maybe this just isn't working for me. And sometimes we don't feel like we can do that, because I've heard some people say, and you guys help me out here, I'd rather be in a bad relationship than no relationship. Like, what is that about?
So I think that when someone's controlling you and kind of like wanting you to call them all the time, I think that is worse than not being in a relationship, because when you're not in a relationship, you can flirt with whoever you want. You can have fun with a whole bunch of people, but when you're in a relationship, oh, you talk to them, use the flirty voice or all kinds of things that your partner is like asking you, oh, are you texting so and so, are you doing this? And it's a lot of stress.
Well, and I would like to add, and I think Stephanie, you can probably back me up on this one, but if you're in the right relationship and it's a good relationship, the person you're flirty with is the person you're in the relationship with. So you don't have to worry about them flirting with somebody else, because you have a partner that trusts you and that you trust.
Right. And it really starts to become, if it's going to be a long-term thing, it really starts to become more of a partnership between the two of you. And that's a good place to get to before you get married.
So Stephanie, let's go there, because this is a question I think that people are going to ask, or probably have asked you. So I don't want to assume, but I think there's probably some validity here, that like, oh, well, he must take care of you because you have a disability. He's your caregiver. What does that look like? And have you felt that?
Yes. It's one of the differences, I think, in navigating a relationship and marriage when you have a disability, is the perception of people outside of your relationship. Not so much family, because they get it by that point.
Hopefully.
Well, yes, one would hope by the time you're married, they like who you're with and they they get it. That's the hope. But it's not something that's necessarily said, but it can come across in somebody's tone or the words they choose when they talk to you. So for instance, we were out on a date one time, and we were at a bar to have dinner and listen to a concert or something. And I have difficulty with bar stools because they're quite high. So it can take some just kind of working together to get me onto the stool and balanced. And Ben's very used to that. It's a very natural part of our interaction with each other. So we were doing that, and he got me in the chair and then went around to his chair and sat down. And unbeknownst to us, two people in the bar had seen the whole thing. And as they were leaving and past our table, they put a hand on his shoulder and just said to him, "We just want to tell you, you're so great. You're so caring and sweet to her to do that," you know. And it wasn't what they said, it was the way they said it.
It was patronizing.
Right. So that he was caring for me, and it wasn't the type of thing, because when you love someone, you care for them. That's a natural part of it. But their focus on the care part was really tough for us, and usually what happens after an interaction like that is we go home and we talk about it. We have a conversation about how we feel about that, about how we want to respond to that, and about what we'll do next time. Because it's not.
Yeah, how do you respond to that, Stephanie?
It depends.
Or do you?
It depends on the day, because how you feel about something can change from day to day, moment to moment. So how I would respond, usually my go-to is humor, because humor is a way to get a message across without making somebody defensive or angry. And the last thing you want to do when you're confronting somebody is add more anger to it. So usually we'll make a joke or, laugh it off, but there are days where it's just frustrating and really upsetting. And so what I've told my husband is, if you're in one of those situations and you lose your temper or have a moment of, can you just let me help my wife, right? That's okay. I'm not going to police your emotional response. I'm not going to police your reaction. I don't go around telling my friends and family how to respond to something. You're allowed to respond to something in the way that you see fit at the time. If it escalates and it gets, if it gets worse, it may be time to take a step back and take a breath. But I'm not going to be, I'm not going to say, "Oh, don't say anything. Oh, don't do it." No.
Yeah.
You're allowed. You love me. I love you. We're allowed to respond for each other. We're allowed to stand up for one another.
And you're also allowed to just walk away from the moment, because some
Absolutely.
people are not teachable.
Right.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's not your job to teach the world.
Right.
I mean, you're out for dinner and drinks and whatever. And, we're all strong advocates. So that's hard, right? Not to be a teachable moment. But,
Right.
just thinking, do you have to be that, all the time?
Right. No, you don't have to be on all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a comment in the Facebook page, which I think is kind of interesting, just along kind of these same lines, and maybe Ashley, you'll have something to say too. Someone commented about in high school how the dances were, there was a specific dance for the special ed kids, and that as they kind of grew into adulthood, learned, realized that maybe that wasn't right and that that's not really inclusive. But I think that's one of the things we kind of talked about when planning was, this thought that people with disabilities have to date other people with disabilities. And just wondered if either of you had any comments on that. Maybe Ashley, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I do have to say that it is easier to date other people with disabilities because a lot of people without disabilities kind of looked at me. For me personally, they would look at me like, oh, you have nothing going on, and they'd be like, oh, you're really cute, and then all of a sudden when they saw my disability, they were like, oh no, that is when
But
I had.
Ashley, I wonder if that is that about your disability, or is it about having something in common with somebody? Because you might just have more in common with people who socialize, you know, in your circle, or do things that similar to what you do, go to self-determination conferences, whatever that might be. It's not necessarily that they have a disability, it's that you have something in common with them. Does it feel that way or not really?
Well, I get along with like older guys because they are older, and if they have a disability, sometimes they can understand what I do and that's why because when I was younger, I tried to try to date like people that were non-disabled, and then they didn't like me that way or something.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's
So what about you, Stephanie? Do you, I mean, I would assume that there's some comments or even questions in the beginning about what that looked like in your relationship.
Right. Well, I always had the thought that when it comes to this, I'm not going to limit myself. So if I find that connection and that want to have a relationship with someone with a disability, great. That's great. If I don't, and end up dating someone who doesn't have a disability, that's also great. I didn't really think. I guess for me, the floor was open on that one. I didn't really let it stop me or really limit it to that. And early on, particularly when we started dating more in the same place, face to face, things would happen, and we would have conversations about it. And I ended up asking my husband a lot, have you ever been through anything like this before? Because I was the first person with a disability he dated. So, and we kind of had to sit down and talk about it honestly and say, in dating someone with a disability, there's going to be different things that you'll experience that you wouldn't if you were with someone who didn't have a disability. So we found it really helpful just to talk about it. And he said something really helpful to me early on. And he said, I don't care how the rest of the world sees it. I am your boyfriend. I don't want to, caring is part of it, but I'm not your caregiver. I'm your boyfriend. I'm your fiance. I'm your husband.
Great. There were two words that stood out to me in what you were saying, Stephanie, and I think, Ashley, you probably said similar, is that the word is connection. So it's not necessarily about what the other person's disability is or isn't. It's more about whether or not the two people find a connection and that there's an equal relationship. And then the other word that I heard was communication. Because it sounds like, Stephanie, you did a great job of communicating and keeping the conversation open. It was new for both of you, right? I mean,
Right.
heck, when I got married, I'd never been married before either. So it was new to me as well. So it's really about figuring it out and walking through it together. And when you get to those speed bumps, slowing down a little bit, right? And kind of figuring them out before you navigate over them and then keep going. So communication and connection seem to be like a common thing. Ashley, do you agree?
Yes, if you don't have well, if someone's not going to listen to you either, if you're going to say something to help them out, and if they're not going to listen to you, no matter what you say, that's going to be a problem. Having good communication is crucial for even when people try to email each other. Communication is good for everything.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, what are some other things that we haven't talked about that you think around the topic of relationships that your peers are curious about or want to know more about? What are some things that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I don't know how far we want to get into this topic, but intimacy.
Well, and so I'm gonna bring us barely into that, and I'm
Okay.
gonna say that's about communication and connection as well,
Yeah.
because it really is about navigating that both people are ready at the same time, that both people are agreeing to do the same things or not agreeing to do anything, you know, like
Right.
kind of agreeing not to do anything, I should say. That's the other way.
Yeah.
And really just having a conversation about it, right? Because everybody's ready to navigate that at their own pace, and nobody should ever be pushed into what they feel like somebody thinks that they should do. And if I don't do something, then this person will break up with me, which is a topic I thought we'd touch a little bit on, is the breakup. Like, what does that look like? And seriously, what does that feel like? And then how do you get through the other side? Because I know in my lifetime, there's been, you know, breakups where you really thought you wouldn't get to the other side. So how do you navigate that and really find maybe the good in what happened and the lesson in what happened, and then move on? So
Ashley,
who
do you want to
wants?
take that one?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Ashley can add to us when we get there.
You're muted.
Who's going?
Go ahead, Ashley. You start.
Okay, I guess sometimes it takes a long time to kind of navigate that. I guess once you kind of break up and just kind of say, okay, this is not working out, then you kind of go through where sometimes you eat a lot of candy and then you gain about 10 pounds. And then you're like, okay, well, and then you see them going off with some girl that you and then you get sad. Then after about 5 months you forget about the person. Then you see a picture with them with someone else, then you get sad again. So it's kind of just a long process of just kind of just getting over that whole, or like just like letting it flow out, and then just not seeing the person or talking to the person kind of like just kind of heals the situation.
So what I'm
Kind of
hearing you
that ups
say,
and
go ahead,
that
Sally.
ups and downs, you know, you have those ups and downs, that it's not just a straight path of the person broke up with me, I feel bad, and now I feel better. You know, it's really those ups and downs.
Right. I think what I'm hearing you say, Ashley, and I think the experiences that I think a lot of us have had, is that it takes time, right? Sometimes it takes very little time. Sometimes it takes a very long time. It just depends on you and the situation. It takes support, right? It takes good friends. It takes maybe good friends and a box of chocolates. It takes maybe some binge watching some Hallmark movies or, you know, something like that, or eating ice cream. But you're allowed to feel sad. But if it gets too sad, you really should reach out to that person in your life that just will listen, or just sit next to you, even if you don't want to talk, but you know that you feel supported by them. And I think we all have friends, girlfriends, parents, whoever that might be, siblings, that might be that support person. But we don't necessarily need somebody to fix it. We just need somebody to be with us while we're sad sometimes.
Yeah, having somebody be there, it can be really helpful. When you come through the other end, the one thing that I would add is with time, you can also look at, well, why didn't it work? Or what, when I get into a relationship, what is it that's important to me? What am I looking for in a partner or in a relationship? And at a certain point in my life, that was really helpful to say, well, you know, I want to create space in my life where I can have a relationship, but if you don't know what's important to you, it can be hard to know if it's the right fit. So when you're thinking about, when you're hitting that point where you can actually think about the breakup without having the big emotional responses, it's helpful to think about, what am I looking for? For me, it came down to three big things. Authenticity, which means someone is who they say they are. They don't try to pretend to be somebody they're not. Humor is huge. Gets you through a lot of things, if you can find the joy and the laughter in it. And
Great.
honesty.
Okay, great. Those
So,
are all good ones. Ashley, tell me 3 things that you have learned while you've been figuring out this dating thing, this adult life. 3 things that you are looking for when you're looking for somebody to date.
Well, I definitely think they need to be motivated and do what they say they're going to do and stuff like that. And one thing is loyalty, because I don't want to have to worry about if they're flirting with this other person or thing. And they have to understand that I have a busy schedule, that I'm not flirting with other people while they're doing whatever. If I really care about someone, I want to just be with them, and that I'll be 100% committed. So I think that would be it. I think the other things just kind of are just minor things.
Yeah, I think one of the words that you described was trust, that you're looking for that. So that's
Yeah.
good. Sally, did you want to say something?
No, I was gonna say just such important takeaways, I think, and it's been a great conversation. Just lots of good comments on Facebook. People are like, "Where's this video gonna be?" So we will post this on our YouTube, on the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities YouTube page. It's usually about a day. I just wanted to, before we wrapped up, I wanted to give Pam a chance to maybe give us a 411, a little information about her grant if she wants to, and then we'll probably close it up for the day.
Sure. Well, thanks, Sally. So everybody, this was a great conversation. Honestly, I think maybe we should think about having this on a fairly regular basis, because I think we might get more questions and more insight.
Absolutely.
So what I am doing, I work at Disability Rights Wisconsin, and we are a partner with Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities. I also sit on their board. But the grant that Disability Rights Wisconsin got about 1.5 years ago was to write a curriculum for healthy and safe relationships for people with intellectual disabilities. And the reason I'm super passionate about that is exactly what this conversation was about, is that there are so many people that want relationships. We all want relationships, right? But navigating that and being safe about it and understanding who you are and what you want before you enter a relationship, and then what your deal breakers are when you're in a relationship, those are all really important things. So we are in the process of writing a curriculum. In about, I would say, 4 to 6 months, we will be finding a group of self-advocates, people with disabilities around the state. Particularly, we'd like to find them in 4 pilot areas, which is the Green Bay area, Ashland Bayfield area, Eau Claire area, and Kenosha Racine area, to train to co-teach these classes with me. So we would be co-leaders together, and we would train people. They don't have to figure it out for themselves. And we're going to have a whole bunch of fun doing that and building leadership skills and increasing knowledge around the state. And then once we are all trained, then we're going to go out and do the trainings for self-advocates in those 4 areas. And who knows, at some point, we might then get permission to bring it all over the state. And that's really what we hope for, because we hear from everybody that this is a topic they want to learn more about.
And for people who know about the Living Well grant, we have a similar, we're kind of running side by side. We have our safe and free curriculum that we are piloting with some of our providers and our self-advocates. And the best thing is that Pam and Disability Rights and BPDD and the Living Well grant, we're all kind of working together. So in the end, I think we're going to have lots of good information out there. We just are learning so much and about how important this is, and about what people with disabilities need to know about relationships, about their rights, about keeping themselves safe. So we're excited that all of us are kind of working on this around the state. And so we look forward to bringing you more information like this in future Living Well Wednesdays. And thank you so much to Stephanie and Ashley and Pam for joining us today. This was a great conversation. I'm always excited when we do Living Well Wednesday, because while we plan, I know it's going to be better than I ever imagined. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we will see you next Wednesday. We're going to have our vaccine people back. So Marcia and Mitch will be joining us again to talk about the COVID-19 vaccine. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not next week. That's the last week. Next week, we're going to have Phil from the board. She's going to be doing some information about the self-determination channel. All right.